Welcome to the Align and Abide podcast with Dr. Kim Tran, where we help you achieve your greatest God-given potential. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dedicated to helping patients find lasting relief and vibrant health through chiropractic care, nutrition, acupuncture, functional medicine, and inner healing prayer. Minnesota Family Chiropractic is on a mission to transform lives physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Our team of doctors focuses on whole person care to address the root causes, not just the symptoms, so you can get back to living fully. Ready to start your path towards health? Visit drkimtran.com. That's drkimtran.com or call 612-545-5672 to schedule your consultation and experience integrative patient-centered care. Now, before we get started today with one of my fabulous guests today, Joey Orlando, I just want to give a big thank you to Han Fuchs, who many of you may know is my media specialist here at Salem Media. And, you know, at Salem Media, which many of you know this, they just have a passion for sharing your story and business mission with conservative Christian audiences as America's leading media company. Now, of course, Joey, I'm so glad that you're here.
I am really excited to be here, Dr. Kim. Thanks for having me.
So I was just so excited. I keep asking people, I'm like, hey, who do you know? Who do you think I should feature on air? And if any of you know somebody that you're like, you know what, Dr. Kim, this would be a great guest, you can actually go to my website. We have a link there that you can send me a message and say, hey, Dr. Kim, this person would be amazing to have on air and share their story. So Joey Orlando is a youth evangelist and passionate communicator who is dedicated to helping middle school and high school students discover hope and purpose through a relationship with the one who created them, right? God, obviously, right?
Amen.
He travels and speaks at youth groups, retreats, camps, and schools. So if you want him, go to joeyorlando.org. because you will want him after this, by the way. He has more than 15 years of youth ministry experience, including 7 years as a youth pastor. And he has a youth ministry degree from North Central University in Minneapolis. So I'm just so excited that you're on, because we were talking, you know, as we were prepping up for this, and you're like, okay, Doc, like, what are you going to have me on for? And we talked, there's such a need right now.
Yeah.
For kids to find God, to find Jesus.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a hunger like I haven't seen. I mean, really, my bird's eye view of youth ministry spans probably 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I did a breakout session at a youth pastor retreat in October called it Youth Ministry Time Machine. And,
all right.
And So, you know, I youth pastor in the early 2000s and have stepped back into youth ministry these last few years. And so being in the trenches really week in and week out in our local church, working with the youth ministry there, and then traveling and speaking, and really seeing the trends that have been happening in students' lives at a grassroots level the last 3 years. And God is just moving. He's doing something incredible, again, among middle school, high school students, college students as well. And it's a move of God for sure. Mm-hmm. And there's really, what we've seen is, you know, post-COVID, you see this darkness that has fallen on youth. When you have, you know, it's something around 6 to 7 hours that students spend on screen time. On average. So some even more than that.
That's a lot.
On a daily basis. And so when you think of the deepest, darkest regions of the internet for many of these students, and a lot of these students, you know, who may not have parents that are involved as much as well, have their phones throughout the night in their bedrooms, all of that. And the three most common words that we hear and talking to other youth ministers as well, but my wife and I, and working with youth week in and week out: anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. And I would say that has been consistent with our patients too. I have seen more youth on anxiety, depression, drugs. I was just talking to one of my parents and they're like, we don't know what to do with our daughter anymore because they keep going to the doctors and they keep drugging them up. And I just want you to realize is that God never created you with a lack of drugs.
Yeah.
And so when we're using drugs, you're actually covering up the problem. And kids don't get any better. And the same goes for adults, right? They're on anxiety, depression, drugs. Sometimes they're on up to over 10 different drugs and they're not even functioning.
Yeah.
And they're losing out on that. And I think this is where you're coming in and saying, okay, we got to light them up, right? Because they have to know their worth. And if a student, right, if your son, daughter, granddaughter, grandson knew their worth and knew that they were completely worthy, wonderfully and perfectly made by God and Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Then it would change their whole world, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the darker the darkness, the greater the impact of the light when it arrives. And we've seen that been happening over the last 3 years. The local youth ministry of our home church, Celebration Church, Lakeville, Minnesota, my wife and I are part of the volunteer leadership team there, and we've seen over 270. This is a church that runs, maybe 800 to 1,000 on Sunday mornings, and a youth ministry that used to run maybe 40 students on a weekly basis. Well, in the last 3 years, we've seen over 270 first-time salvations to come.
That is
come
amazing.
to Jesus, and along with that, 140 plus water baptisms to publicly declare that decision to follow Christ as well. And it's not just there though. What started to realize it's happening around the country in youth ministries, in churches, in college campuses, high school faith club groups. It's a move of God that's happening everywhere. So the darkness has created this incredible hunger for something real. And so students are running to the presence of God when they experience it. They have everything they could possibly look into that is offered to them on the internet 6-7 hours a day as they're scrolling. And it's not filling, it's not satisfying. And it's left this intense hunger. And like I said, the darker the darkness, the greater the impact of the light when it arrives. And it's incredible. The hunger is real. The need is great to respond to it right now. And the time is now to do something for the
absolutely.
church.
I mean, I think about this, and I've discussed this on the radio before, is that the more time that you or your child or your grandchild spends on their phone, it actually increases their depression and anxiety and, these thoughts of suicide, because there's nothing that compares. It doesn't give them that dopamine hit. That's what we need God and Jesus for, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, coming up, we're going to be discussing, okay, so what do you need to do if you have a son, daughter that's actually struggling, or perhaps maybe it's you? How do you start to help them? And how do you start to get into these things like Celebration Church and their youth ministry, or we talked about Crosstown Young Life? Where do you need to help start plugging in your son, daughter to help save them? And that starts now. And if you are looking to transform your life and health, this is Dr. Kim Tran, and you can find me at drkimtran.com. That's drkimtran.com. So we were just talking about this. You got into youth ministry, and for you, I think this is really important, because now, did you grow up with that perfect family growing up, or what got you into youth ministry?
Yeah, so my family, I grew up in a family 100% Italian. I actually have dual citizenship with Italy. So loud Italian family, and strong religious roots as far as religion goes, Catholicism, Roman Catholic Church. My mom especially was a really good Catholic. And the shirt I have on here, Jesus Revolution, when that happened, I had a cousin who had walked into a Jesus People coffee house and heard testimonies, gave his life to the Lord, shared his faith by grace are you saved through faith, not of your works, not your religious works. You can go to church your whole life. So I was baptized Catholic. I went to a Baptist grade school, a Lutheran high school, an Assemblies of God college, married in an evangelical free church. And what I learned is life is not about religion, but a relationship with God. Not that religion is bad, but you can go to church your whole life, and religion without Jesus and that daily relationship with him is dead. And so we need to be a part of a church. That's the family of God that he created us to be a part of. But and so my father was saved out of alcoholism as well, just radically transformed my parents' lives when I was at a young age. So I did grow up in a strong church, strong youth group. My youth pastor when I was in high school is actually currently on my board of directors. I mean, he's retired and nice. So maintain that relationship. And I really, in high school, my senior year of high school, was called to youth evangelism. I was going to be an aeronautic engineer, through a whole series of events, but one particular, I went forward in a youth service to really just seeing souls that are, a vision of souls who are marching into the flames of hell, who don't know Jesus, and just started weeping, and God had already been working on my heart for call into youth ministry, but I wasn't sure, and I had this guy come up to me at the altar as I was praying and crying, and this total stranger came up to put his hand on my shoulder. This was at a combined youth event in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I grew up, and he said, "How can I pray for you?" So I explained this whole thing. I'm going to be an aeronautic engineer, work on the space shuttle program, eventually build the USS Enterprise. Like, I was a big Trekkie fan, and
He's still a Trekkie fan.
And then I had this little bumblebee that's been buzzing in my ear, buzz, youth ministry, but I don't know, but now I'm sitting here back in the back row, originally just not paying that close of attention. God starts giving me this burden for souls who are dying and lost. And now I'm down here praying. And I look at the guy and I'm like, and he says, "Let me tell you something. I used to be an aeronautic engineer. And I lived out in Los Angeles, worked for a defense contractor, rode around in limousines, made a lot of money. I left it all to go into youth ministry, and nothing's been more fulfilling." I was like, "What?"
Not what you expected.
I've met one other aeronautic engineer since then. And, so God just kind of ordained that circumstance to really solidify and let me know, this has been me talking to you. I want you to do this. And so it's my passion. And I looked at my wife. I was sitting in the living room because it's been a lot of years now. A lot of water under the bridge. I went into the corporate world and worked for a number of years, did sales, and stepped back away from the corporate world a couple years ago to step back into full-time youth ministry. But I sat with my wife, so she's got upper high school girls at our house on a regular basis where she's having coffee with them, discipling them, meeting with them at coffee shops. I looked at her and I said, "Is it weird that you and I are more passionate now than ever before about youth ministry and seeing students' lives changed?" I mean, she doesn't think it's weird. I don't think it's weird. I think it's weird that people are not passionate about seeing teenagers' lives changed with the presence of God, especially with what they're going through right now.
Well, and I think this is really important for us to know is that, we talked about this over the phone as well, is that these young adults, right, these students, everyone's so concerned. They're like, "Gosh, they didn't do what we did. Like, look at our hardships." But what you have to understand is that during COVID, they were programmed to be afraid of people.
Yeah.
That's the message that they heard. I mean, if you look at a lot of the social media things that you need to do, sometimes I actually tell my families the best thing that you can do for your family is to limit screen time for everyone across the board. Because if you don't want your kids on your phone, then you need to be off your phone too. But it's one of the biggest ways that you start making changes in your own family. And what people don't realize is now you've got teenagers coming into young adults that are still coming in the same problem. They're 6 years behind socially. Now, what that means is their communication levels are not the same. They don't know how to handle simple conflicts that they should have dealt with as they were kids or teenagers.
Yeah.
And so it's progressively coming to something that we need more people to step in and say, how are we going to change this?
Yeah.
And I think this is, the simple answers we got to remember is that, God is going to move them, but he needs spiritual warriors. And this is what spiritual warriors and spiritual leaders to lead them up.
Yeah.
We need to start changing our own community. We need to stop being afraid of each other.
Yeah.
And recognize that if somebody is dealing with addiction, if they're dealing with whatever that may be, or maybe they're acting out, it's because they have issues going on at home. I mean, I think about this. I did not grow up in that type of environment. I mean, many of you know I grew up in an abusive, alcoholic home. Like, I was doing everything possible to stay out of it. I mean, I was going to church. I was going to church by myself in elementary school.
Yeah.
My parents would drop me off, and I did, God was watching out for me. Like, when he says, I'm finding the lost souls, he was like, okay, I got to take her, grab her. And, so I look at what you do as in ministry. It's such a huge impact because I think about how many people God lined up to make sure I didn't fall through the cracks, even though I had a horrible home life.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, I think, I talked about this before with you as well, that there's kind of a mandate right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for me, it was God saying, you need to get off the sidelines and step into this thing, dive in head first. And I think there's a call to the church to get off the sidelines when it comes to investing in youth. I know churches, attractional ministry and investing in Sunday morning service and investing in the hottest, worship leader, and all those things are good, and lights and fog or whatever. I'm not against those things, but certainly we've seen this era of attractional ministry to get bodies in seats. And what's happened over what I've seen over time is not as much investment in youth because they don't necessarily always translate to increased attendance on Sunday mornings right away. Eventually, hopefully, that's what you're working towards in the discipleship process, but they certainly don't translate into bringing in finances. And so there's been a lack of investment in youth ministry. There's been a lack of mandate as much as I believe there was at one time. And we see where that's been I think it was Lenin who was like give me a generation of youth and I'll change and I think there's whether it's to change them for the good or the bad, right? So where in Lenin's case it was for not great things, but it's all about our youth. We need to invest in the youth. If there's a couple things you had mentioned. If you're a parent, I would hop on there. There are groups that you can hop on, even on social media. Facebook, there's a Facebook group called Parenting in a Tech World. And there's parents who will just share issues they're going through that they discovered with their kid as it relates to their technology and their phones. And then other parents will share, solutions that they found to that. So everything from, I certainly would not have my son or daughter with their phone overnight. A lot of parents, what they'll do is have their charging station out, and when they go to bed, they're just set a standard and a guideline. Hey, we'll pay for this phone. We'll pay for that. That's when you really need to kind of lay down the stipulations instead of trying to backtrack over time. But lay down some stipulations. So there's a lot of practical things you can do, but being aware of what is out there, what's happening, what the problems are, and then how to set some standards and guidelines. And I'll tell students this as well, between pornography and all the stuff that's out there on the internet, hey, a good starting point is set some boundaries where it's like, hey, at 9:00 at night, I'm going to go plug my phone in or whatever, and I'm not going to have my phone. But more than anything, though, it's not about not sinning, but it's about falling in love with Jesus and going after him and spending time in the Word and in prayer and emphasizing that. So being a part of a community, a strong youth ministry, strong youth group, and I encourage anyone at any age to step up and volunteer to invest in students, whether that's one student in your church or being a part of a leadership team at a youth ministry. But it is just such a great need right now for the church to step up. There is a mandate.
Yeah. And I think when, this is an important part is as far as a church, we, the people, are actually the church when it comes to the Bible. And, this is a big movement right now for you to step up. And what that means to you is going to look very differently for each and every person. But this is also part of the reason why if you're feeling lost, where inner healing prayer ministry makes a huge difference for you. And you can find out more at drkimtran.com. That's drkimtran.com. I'm back with Joey Orlando, a youth evangelist who you can actually bring into your local church, your ministry, your school. Because if you have a love for changing over youth, Joey is out there. I've seen some of his videos. Actually, it's so funny because when Han first connected us, and it was so interesting because you were down in Rochester at the youth ministry down there.
I was. Yeah, we took a group from Celebration Church to a convention. It's the Assemblies of God Minnesota statewide youth convention where we get together for 3 days, 2 nights, and we took about 100 students from our church, and then about 5,000 students gather at the Rochester Civic Center. Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing. So shortly after we talked, all of a sudden on TikTok, I got here's all these videos on youth that, Brett.
Your phone was probably spying on you.
I know, my phone was spying on me. This is, and I think, I was like, this is a good thing because I know we talked about Brent. He's currently running 7 marathons
in 7 days on 7 different continents. They just finished the 4th one. So they did Antarctica was the first one.
Yeah.
Running on ice. Yeah, it's crazy. And all of that is to help raise funds for stopping and freeing girls, preventing human trafficking around the world. They have partners that they give funds to. He's 30 for Freedom is an organization he started 10 years ago. They hit the $3 million funds raised. All the funds they raise, 100% of it goes towards setting young people free from human trafficking.
Yeah, and here's the thing: when we think about human trafficking, we think about it because growing up in a Asian environment, you hear about sex trafficking there, but you don't realize it's actually happening here too.
Absolutely.
And if one of the ways that they actually reach your kids, by the way, is through TikTok, through Instagram, because everybody wants to be on these profiles. And we were talking about this, if your child is seeing a lot of ADHD, if they're showing autistic symptoms, if they're having depression, anxiety, it's because they are bombarded by too much technology. Whereas if you have the TV running in the background, if you have the iPads going all the time, if you have the telephone, if they have access to that and it's running in the background, by the way, that is too much for your mind, more or less your own child's mind and your grandchild's mind. So if you're starting to see those things, you have to limit usage overall. And I had one of my families, they actually limited her to about an hour a week, which sounds, I know you're thinking, oh,
yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, right. But they knew because their daughter at the time was under 5 years old, and they knew.
Oh, yeah.
They knew that a child's brain before the age of 10 cannot handle that much technology. And then more or less when they got it all during COVID and they had to do all this work from school, that's why a lot of their brains were getting fried in a way because they couldn't handle that much. Their brains have not been developed. And by the way, I would say most of our brains are not developed to handle that much technology. But, when we're looking at this, I just want you to realize this. Technology can be used for good, but also I want you to think about this. We were talking about this where when I first started TikTok for my business, and you're thinking, okay, what comes up? I'm going to tell you that everything started coming up. Like, it was LGBTQ. It was on here, take this drug, take this vaccine. And it was on, especially for girls, they were talking about using sex to empower yourself.
Yeah.
And if you do not have a louder voice where you're not guiding your child to say, hey, your worth is in God and in Jesus, they start going down this path. And I know, Joey, we talked about this.
Well, so like addiction to pornography is one of the number one things that we run into, especially with guys. But here's the thing. I mean, my wife, so we have 2 children of our own that we raised. They were 13 when we waited till they were 13 before we dove into having them have a phone that they would have with them. And so we were kind of the first group of parents that really raised students with all that became rapidly available online and through the internet. So it's, the addiction to pornography. So when it came to our daughter, I have a son who is a high school social studies teacher, and our daughter is married to a youth pastor right here in Eagan. They serve at River Valley Church youth ministry here in Eagan campus. And talking with my wife, it was always, I had these conversations with my son about the birds and bees, and then certainly address pornography. I mean, I'm Italian. I'm married into a Scandinavian Minnesota family.
Oh gosh, that's a little different, right?
It was, needless to say, we've made 30 years of marriage work, and even with those communication styles. So I grew up. We would argue over how much Parmesan to put on your pasta. We'd spend 5 minutes like, you're putting too much Parmesan. What do you know? You got to put more Parmesan on your pasta. I mean, that's how it went, right? In my wife's family, if it was like, hey, could you pass the Parmesan? And then, the next day it might be followed by like an apology, like, I'm sorry I didn't have the Parmesan closer to you. I feel so bad. I hope I didn't upset you. And it's like, wait, what? So that communication style. But anyways, so I would talk openly about these things with my son, and we'd have a daughter, and I'd tell my wife, we'd talk with my wife, and she would say, it's different with girls. And it really, I would agree, always has been in the past different with girls when it comes to pornography. However, now that we've stepped back into youth ministry the last few years, and with what the internet has done, my wife is blown away at the number of high school students who, are coming out of darkness, finding the light through the gospel message, and the things that they're dealing with. One of the primary things they'll bring up is addiction to pornography, even amongst girls. Well,
and I think this is powerful. We talked about this. 1 in 3 girls is suicidal.
Yeah.
And if we look at all of this stuff, they're being told they need to like sell their bodies, right? And I want you to think about this. Like, when we look at pornography, you think about it that way, but they're seeing all of these perfect bodies, scantily clad. There's definitely some, and you have to teach your child, is that anyone can get access to their photos. If you think it's private, it's not. Like whether it's on Instagram,
and there's really a
Facebook,
grooming process that the internet uses.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything from Instagram to posting yourself wearing scantily clothed or in your bathing suit. That's kind of a big thing, in the summertime, especially here. And then they have the OnlyFans, starting different accounts where these girls are kind of pressured to put their photos out there. And there's a grooming process where it's like, hey, if you get so many likes and this and that, and you can actually make money off of this. And so it's just another method that Satan has used to draw girls to make them objects, objectify them, and this whole, like we started this conversation, the sex trafficking thing on a much small, multi-level scale,
Well,
even here at home.
Yeah. And for many of you, Snapchat is also included in on that, because what's happening that you may not be aware of is they'll start to make different profiles. So you got to know what's happening with your children, but also it's just teaching them about having some modesty and respect for both, not just respect for your boys, but respect for girls too. It's like, how do we raise them and know that if they are not showing modesty online, their pictures can be taken and sold and changed, because now with AI, all of that stuff can be taken.
Yeah, and there's
you have no idea the level.
There's
that can
scams. So this Facebook group, Parenting in a Tech World, is I would recommend that. There's an individual who's on there as well, oftentimes, that will be posting things. His name is Officer Gomez. He's a resource officer for many years. And he can share all kinds of stories and things to be aware of, to watch out for. And one of them is there's scams out there where this is oftentimes even with boys, where there's some scam artist behind a keyboard that's pretending to be a girl and getting them to eventually show send a nude picture of themselves, and then suddenly they flip on them and say, hey, I got these nude pictures of you. I got pictures of you doing this or that or whatever, that they talk them into doing and sending. And if you don't send me $5,000, I'm going to release these photos to all of your friends, family. I'm going to put it out in the public. And we have stories of students committing suicide because of that. And so that's, you just have to be aware out there. Like we were talking earlier in the break about how Satan, the internet, there's a spiritual reality to it. And we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers of darkness in this world. And we need to realize that when students are out there, there's I think God can use the internet and, from scripture and all of that. Absolutely. That's out there, that students, Bible study but also Satan is using it, and you open yourself up to the demonic attack when students are taking in some of that stuff. So it's Romans 12 says, be not conformed any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So that means if they're spending 6-7 hours on negative things on the internet, you're conforming to the patterns of this world.
Yeah. And a big part is you can start making the change, not just for yourself, for your kids, for your grandkids. And you can find out more at drkimtran.com. That's drkimtran.com. What we want to share with you today is that there's an urgency to bring the gospel message out there, is that if you want to see a change in what's happening in our community, it starts with you. I know you want to wait until the next person rolls up, but no, it's you. Yeah. And whether or not you start to mentor one student, multiple students, or perhaps you're like me and decide to, sponsor about 1,500 kids in Crosstown Young Life, another 2,000 over at Foster One. I was like, okay, good, let's go. And I think this is so powerful for you is that you felt a need to say, all right, God, I went back to the corporate world, but you called me back. Yeah. And God has a way of saying, hey, I designed you to do this gifting. And many of you know that as a business and as a person, I was attacked because I came up after being that Christian practice, that Christian business. And I'm like, how? And how is it wrong to pray over people before I start my day? Yeah. How is it wrong to take my team through prayer?
It's crazy
How is
to think about.
Yeah. And I want you to think about this, is that I knew it was a spiritual attack that needed to come through the courts of heaven, to come through God. And God led me to say, all right, I am going to be the greatest Jewish attorney you've ever had. And
nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Because that's the thing. You can, by the way, I love my lawyers. Many of you know this, right? And But in this case, it was not of the world. It was a spiritual attack. And what God led me through, I ended up having this case completely closed after I'd been attacked. And you know how much money I paid out of pocket? Zero.
Awesome.
$0 because it
and
was
that's the
demonic.
law offices of God, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? You're like,
WWW.
go. But I knew that God would not lead me through that if it wasn't because I needed to be more bold. And many of you know that we're getting into this season of acceleration and increase, and God is asking you to step up, whether it's as a kingdom business, a kingdom financer.
Yeah, for sure.
And, in ministry, right? And we were talking about this, is that some of us are called. So I know many of you are like, okay, I want to be like Joey. Don't worry, you can reach out to joeyorlando.org,
Definitely.
right?
Definitely.
You want to be a youth ministry? Go.
Absolutely.
Let's go. But for some of us, we all have different callings. We were called to do our business. We are called to be a contractor. We are called to be going into finance. We are called in different areas. And by the way, every single calling is just as worthy in the eyes of God.
100%.
But what God is asking us to do as kingdom businesses, as kingdom financiers, is to actually finance these ministries that are out there. Because, first, like Joey, I mean, what a gifting to be in ministry and to know, like, you were going to be like, okay, let me go through.
Yeah.
And somebody is like, that is not your calling, right? At 18, you're like, okay, get into youth ministry. And even when you went back to the corporate world, you were like, okay. God's like, nope.
Yeah.
Step out of it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like I said, there's a mandate to get off the sidelines and step into this. And my passion, I mean, seeing the move of God that He's doing, and it was really clear. I had someone even speak. It was just a random Sunday morning. This person was someone I had known through our church who moved away, and he came back briefly for a weekend. Business stuff that he was on. His family was back home. He came by himself. He was, he said, God just. This was during worship. He came over, he saw me, and he said, I don't know what it is, but I got this picture. And I felt like I'm supposed to share it with you. And it's a picture of this old broken down house. And Jesus walks up to the front door of the house and opens the door, starts ripping up the floorboards, and reaches down to the basement and grabs the original blueprints of the house and says, I want to rebuild this house with the original blueprints of your life. And he's like, I don't know if that means anything to you or not. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So God called me, as a teenager to youth evangelism. And I just, through a whole bunch of circumstances, He's pulled me back out of the corporate world. And I learned so much in the corporate world that's even applied to help me in this. But, seeing students running to the light, seeing the changed lives. I mean, genuinely changed lives of non-church students who, I think of James, 3-year addiction to drugs. He was a senior at New Prague High School, and someone invited him to youth, and he experienced the presence and the power of God that set him free. And that was a year and a half ago. And he has since now stepped into, he's right now, in October, he went to Costa Rica, and he has started a 1-year internship as a missionary to Costa Rica. So real true life changes that we're seeing. And so I stepped back into youth evangelism. My passion is to go where the need is, regardless of finances. And so I'd say 80% or more of youth ministries have little to no budget. But what I've been seeing, in the last 7 months, I've spoken 24 different times in different youth events and youth ministries, seen 146 students come forward in response to the gospel. I have here in my hand like a New Believer Bible. So I'll bring a case of New Believer Bibles. I'll also tell youth pastors or whoever I'm going and where I'm speaking that, listen, however much time you can give me, I appreciate, but regardless of that, I need a good 10, 15 minutes for students who do come forward and respond to the gospel, to explain the gospel message, to really explain confessing him Lord of your life, explain the conversation you're about to have with him as we lead you in prayer to start this new life, and give them each a new believer Bible, bring a card where they fill out first name, last name, cell phone, grade, school, and all those cards go with the local youth pastor and youth ministry so they can follow up with these students. But the thing is, of those 146 students that have responded to the gospel, 113 of them were at 7 donor-funded Invite Night outreaches. And so these donor-funded Invite Night outreaches kind of been a model that God's given me, where you basically encourage students to bring friends, right, and to hear a clear gospel message. With that, we give away free pizza. I mean, so these are like I have in my hand a sample of one of these outreaches of getting professionally printed invitation cards. The back of it says, "One night can change everything, June 4th, 2025. And then, that local youth ministry's Instagram page, and on the other side, it says prize drawing entry for every friend that you bring or for just showing up for the first time, with the date, the time. You get free pizza, and the prize drawings, like in this case, are Bluetooth speaker, $100 Lululemon gift card, a variety of items that students would really get motivated and excited to come out for. But the point is not the prize giveaway. So I had larger budget youth ministries kind of share the effectiveness of what works, what doesn't work as well. So it's not just about having a fun time that they're drawn to, but ultimately the gospel message and the presence of God is what they're running to. And so 7 Invite Night outreaches, we saw 113 students respond to the gospel, and it became this model. So God woke me up at 3 a.m. this past September and said, for 2026, I want you to provide 36 donor-funded Invite Night outreaches. And so you're talking where, free pizza, prizes, all of that, travel expenses, you're talking closer to $1,200 to $1,500 per. So over $50,000 that he told me I should raise to provide these outreaches where we've seen long-lasting results of students inviting students and seeing life change as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you have 36. Well, now it's going to be 35 because God led me to sponsor one of your nights. Oh.
All right, amen. Let's go.
That I heard it yesterday, but I was holding up. But how can they reach you to help sponsor you, to help bring you into their school, their ministry? Yeah,
the website, joeyorlando.org, has all the contact information. I have an Instagram page, Joey V. Orlando, but there's also a donor link on there with a donor platform. I have a board of directors that oversees all funds and the ministry as well.
Awesome.
501c3 nonprofit, tax deductible.
Awesome. Thank you, Joey, for coming on today.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Align and Abide podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.